Hey, everybody. It is Kevin Henry, editor-in-chief for drbicuspid.com. Thanks so much for joining us for another episode of the podcast. Thrilled today to be joined by Bryton, Neal and Bob Spiel. We're going to talk about hiring today, specifically whenever it comes to those associates. So, gentlemen, how are you all today?
Fantastic, Kevin.
Awesome. Hey, before we dive into the topic, I just want everybody to know a little bit more about you and what you guys do in the industry. So, Bryton, you want to kick us off?
Yeah, for sure. So Bob and I are co-founders of hiringpros.com, where we specialize in helping private dental practices hire right fit associates nationwide.
That's good. And Bob, what
Kevin,
about
we
you?
go way back.
We
I've been
do.
in dentistry now going on 18 years, and Hiring Pros was a spinoff from some work that I did as a dental consultant for years. About 4 years ago, Bryton and I decided, there's a real need inside private practice dentistry in particular to be able to get dentists to be able to replicate themselves well, find great people, because sadly, most of the time, it ends up being not a good relationship for either side. And then they find themselves back at it again. And now you've got a bigger problem. And that is, how do you handle the volume that was being created by two dentists, by one dentist? And now you got to find somebody else, So that's what we began. It's been a great ride. Bryton's now the CEO of Hiring Pros, and we're doing some great work for a lot of practices throughout America.
Well, I'm thrilled to have both of you on today. And Bob, I'm going to start with a question to you because this is obviously embedded in an article that you wrote for us for
Yeah.
And one thing that I thought was really interesting is that you talked about the hiring of associates, and you talked about it's got to be the right thing, because sometimes hiring the wrong associate can be worse than not having one at all. Tell me why.
Well, it's because what we found in hiring in general is bringing on the wrong person is worse than having no person at all, because now you've got two problems instead of one. And the two problems is what I do now. I still have the need, but now I've got somebody else that I realize isn't in the right spot, So given that fact, what we found is that if too often, I suppose just to put a initial thought in this, Kevin, we use our gut to hire, okay? And then we kind of back it up with our brain. And what we've really tried to create at Hiring Pros, and what I worked on developing years ago, was, how can we create a system that actually uses most of your mental power to be able to figure this out right, and then you use your gut in the end to confirm it. So it's really flipping that whole focus. And when it's right, man, it's magic. But if it's wrong, it's ugly, and both parties really feel the ugliness behind it.
Bryton, I know you do some things with DISC when it comes to those personalities and making sure people are in the right spots. How do we get to the point whenever we're doing some interviews that we really learn who that person is before they ever step foot at day one as an employee of the practice?
Yeah, it's a great question, Kevin. And before I jump into it, I want to add just 2 cents to Bob, if I could, really quick.
Yeah, sure, please.
Because you asked, what's kind of the consequence of hiring almost the wrong person, right? And unfortunately, I don't think it gets talked enough about. When we actually consider, so like, think about it with me just for a second, okay? If you're a practice owner, you're bringing on another doctor, and your practice, if you're just one practice owner or one doctor in a practice, you're probably around 1.5, maybe up to 2 million in revenue. And bringing on this other doctor has the ability to impact taking that to 2.5, maybe to 3, maybe to 3.5, depending on what you now do with your own time, right? And so oftentimes, sure, we look at this person and think, okay, I've got to pay them 200,000 a year or whatever, and that's my cost. The real cost is the 1 to 1.5 million that you're going to either add or miss out on by hiring the right or wrong person. Okay. So this isn't just a $200,000 hire or a $30,000 hire. It's a $1 million decision. And we shouldn't be approaching it with just like hope and gut and vibes, as Bob was alluding to. So then I think it's important to like really establish how serious it is, because too many people approach it with the casualness of planning their next vacation and not actually choosing who they're going to marry. Okay. Because it's a critical decision with any team member. It's critical, but especially partner level, C-suite level, doctor level hires. They are huge impact. So I think it's important to recognize how vital it is to find the right person. Okay. And so going back to your original question, sorry to go down that,
It's good.
that thing. When it comes to finding right fit, it's a huge question, because as Bob mentioned, too many people feel like it's like going to the roulette table and just hoping it lands on black and it just works out for you, but it doesn't work that way. But too many people approach it that way. And so you mentioned using like DISC, and we love DISC. That's our favorite. We've been trained in it. We know exactly what it means and how to use it as one of the data points of hiring. But if you're not familiar with what a personality test teaches you or even what you're looking for, it's kind of useless. If I could just be straight up about it, because if you don't know how to read it and you don't know what you're comparing it against, it's kind of useless. So I would invite us to take even a step back and ask, what do we even want to see on that assessment? What would be the ideal kind of style for us in this role? And so that's where we get really clear on exactly who's the ideal fit for the practice and for this role. Okay. And to identify an ideal fit, you need to identify the four main components, is what I call them. You need to understand, what are the main skills that we need this person to have? What's the culture fit required? What are the character and personality traits, i.e., like DISC stuff? And then what's the level of commitment we need from this person? Is this person an ownership partnership track? Is it, hey, if we get 1 to 2 years out of this associate, we count that as a win because it's better than 6 months? What is the level of commitment we actually need? So if you can start to work backwards and say, okay, who's going to be ideal for me? And you identify, these are the skills required. We need bread and butter, maybe some implants, whatever. And then we go into culture. What's important in our practice? Are we patient first? Are we a little bit more aggressive? What do we need from them? What are the characteristics and the personality style? And then the commitment. That's going to help a lot compared to just like going and maybe identifying based on gut and vibes that like this is a good fit.
And I'm so glad you brought up culture because it's such a buzzword right now. And I think we always think about culture in terms of when we bring on a new dental assistant or we bring on somebody in the front office that they've got to fit into the culture. But I'm glad that you're saying that associate or that new dentist that's coming into the practice needs to fit into that culture as well. It's not the other way around.
Exactly. In fact, Kevin, the dentists themselves are part of the foundation of the entire culture. So if you make that right fit happen and that fits across the four, things that Bryton brought up, those 4 points, and the personality happens to work and the communication style fits within how your practice actually does things today, you've got a really good chance for success.
Yeah.
But if it doesn't, again, it's ugly.
Yeah. It's super bad. Sorry to cut you off, Kevin.
Yeah.
No, please.
No, I would just add, like, yeah, culture is a huge buzzword, right? And so I think it's important to define, what does that actually mean. What the definition I like is, what are the behaviors that we consistently do as an organization? Okay. If we bend over backwards to fit in a patient and we want to put them first no matter what, whether that's we squeeze them in or we stay late or we maybe we could upsell them to like a full arch case, but they really don't need it. Maybe they only need one or two things. That's part of the behaviors that we exhibit as an organization. And so that's what we're talking about when it comes to culture. And that is embodied by all of the team. And in order to really identify that, I think you should engage them and enroll them from the very beginning. If you want this person to match with the culture, i.e., the associate you're bringing on, why not ask the team, hey, we're looking to bring someone on. What characteristics, like, how would you describe our culture? What would we do to bring someone on? And actually enroll them in that process can be super clarifying for you as a owner, because then you know what's actually going on, what's important, and maybe all those core values you wrote up on a wall aren't real or whatever it is. But it's super helpful because these team members are going to be ones that ultimately either embrace them or sabotage them from day one.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. Well, so here's a question for both of you, because we know some team members aren't big fans of change. And sometimes bringing in that new person is change. How do we get past those team members that maybe are going to, as you said, sabotage it or try to make sure it doesn't work?
It's a good question. Go ahead, Bob.
No, I was just going to give an example, and I think Bryton hit on it. Have them participate in it. Help them understand the need, and then have them actually be a participant in the process. Okay, just a case in point, Kevin, a practice in New Mexico that we have been working with now for about the past 5 months. 30-year-old practice, 35-year-old practice with solo owner. Employees have been there forever, and he's ready to step down, but he doesn't want to do a barn door sale. All right. So they found somebody, but we helped onboard him. But in the onboarding process, we made the team a really, really valuable part of the whole thing so that they had this buy-in to start with. They understood what the doctor was trying to achieve, the senior doctor was trying to achieve. but they had this kind of sense of, you know what, we can help make this happen because he's not telling us what we have to do. He's asking us, what do we want to do?
I think Covey, it was either Covey or Patrick Lenciani. Bob, you can tell me which one. I can't remember, but I think it was Covey who said participation breeds buy-in. And if you want people, your team, to be bought in on this person, the worst thing you could do is hire them independently and have them show up on Monday and say, "Hey, here's our new doctor." But I know your face is like shocked and surprised. People do it all the time. They do it all the time, and they're just shooting themselves in the foot by doing that. And so instead, we encourage, involve them from day one. It says, "Hey, we want to go find a great person for our practice. What would that look like for you? Like if you could print out your perfect associate, what would they look like? How would they act? What characteristics would they embody? And then have them meet them before you hire them. Have them come spend a day on site. You can't really do full on working interviews, but you can do a visit, and you can have the team interview them and get to know them. And what you'll find is as you engage your team in that process, they're going to be way more bought in. And if they're not, and they start to sabotage it, you might have the wrong team in place to begin with.
Yeah, I've got to be honest with you. My wife works in the industry, and she was working with a practice in Washington. It was late in the day on Friday. The doc called everybody together and said, "Hey, your new owners are sitting right outside. I'm getting ready to bring them in." And the team had no idea at all what was getting ready
Yep.
to happen.
Yep.
And there weren't a few of them that weren't around on Monday because they didn't want to be a part of it. So,
Yeah.
as you
Yeah.
said, being a part of it's such an important thing.
Yeah, and this might be unpopular, it might be a little bold, but I can't think of anything more selfish as a business owner than to just hand them off and just say, "Hey, good luck." Turns out our relationship that we fostered over the last 10 years was not even worth a conversation. And here's the issue though, there's a lot of advice specifically from brokers who give that advice. And I think candidly, part of the reason is because that has the ability to potentially threaten their ability to make money. And so
Right.
there's
Right.
there's misalignment there, and it's just bad advice. I just think it's really bad advice. And if I were a buyer, there's no chance I would want this team to find out. Just, hey, turns out I'm your new boss. That's poor business in my mind.
Yeah. Yeah. And Kevin, if I can just follow up with that too, the part of in the coaching that we do after an associate comes on board. If we've included the team through the whole process, why cut them off in that process once the doctor's new is on board? So you establish this kind of mentoring framework that not only happens from the senior doctor, but also from the team. You rotate through your senior level assistants. And one of the expectations that you have to set with that new doctor is, listen, you're there to learn from everybody, not just from the senior doctor. And so be ready to be a student. And when that happens, it's really exciting to see a team wrap their arms around somebody and really want them to succeed because they realize that they're helping make the practice happen.
So here's the big question, I guess.
Yeah.
We're heading into 2026, and I know we've touched on a bunch of things already, but what's one thing that if you're looking to bring in somebody into your practice that you need to do better in 26 than you did in 25?
I think you should first look, especially if you're a solo practice owner and you're genuinely considering bringing on another doctor. There's a few things that I would consider, and I would ask myself, why? First of all, why would I want to do that? I could tell someone all day on the benefits of having an associate. Obviously, I'm a little biased. I can tell you what our clients have said, though, and those that have experienced what it feels like to have a good fit and a right fit in place is they've never enjoyed practice ownership more. Because instead of being on an island and having a business that's a ball and a chain, they finally have the autonomy that they always wanted. They have this dream of being able to choose a little bit more of the type of procedures that they wanted to do. They get to actually take the vacation with their family and not close the office and make the vacation cost 5 times as much because we had to stop seeing patients and all those things. But it has to come down to finding the right fit. And so if you're wanting those things, I would then look inward and ask myself 2 big questions. Am I really willing to share my baby, my family, my practice? And what I mean by share, I mean patience, I mean equipment, I mean supplies, I mean team. And am I willing to sacrifice for them to see them succeed? That's question number 1. And we talk a lot about in the article of gaining a wingman, that emotional side of making sure you're ready. And then there's the whole actual logistical side. And Bob could dive into that as far as is my practice even
Ready.
Could we
Yeah.
even do it? Yeah.
Do I have the room? Do I have the space? Do I have the time? Do I have the patience? And
Hey,
that's both patience, patient count and interpersonal patience too.
yeah, I feel like that there's a number side of things and there's also a human side of things.
Very
Totally.
much
And they
so.
both got to
Yes.
be in alignment, right?
They do. Yeah. Bryton used a phrase I think is kind of interesting to hook back to this article, the ball and chain, that a practice does start to feel like a ball and chain. And so all those points that we brought up in the Wingman article really represent, man, if it starts to feel like just this huge drag in your life, that in your personal life, in your professional life, it's not growing, it's not exciting, you're not happy to be there anymore. And frankly, you're running faster than you feel like you have strength. Okay. That's when you really have to step back and say, okay, what's next? And what can I do about it? And sadly, in the industry, we've had a really bad run for decades, Kevin, of not having successful associateships. In fact, if I could just take a second, how this company even started was with a conversation about 16 years ago with Linda Miles, our dear friend, who dropped this bomb on me and one time said, Bob, we have a 75% failure rate in hiring associate dentists in the industry. And I'd hired doctors before. I've probably hired 1,000 people in my whole career, executive level, frontline level, you name it. And I couldn't believe it. It's kind of like, Linda, you got to be kidding me. Why? And she said, nobody knows. It's just how it is. Well, it turns out, to Brighton's point, if you're not willing to share, what happens is that relationship just starts to dissolve very quickly. And also, if you're not in alignment with each other, if you didn't find that right person, because it's really, dentists are unlike any C-level of hire that you can find. You share the team, the space, the patience, the time, the equipment, everything. So it's really like a marriage. And if it's like a marriage, then you got to approach entering into this with the same type of forethought that you have in terms of really getting married. What's this person going to be like? Who do I fit with? What are our values? All these different points. And even then, it still can be rocky. You ask anybody who's been married and it's not a piece of cake, but it's worth it, all right, because you started off with something that is really significant and important. And so going back to the ball and chain, if practice owners just feeling this way, like, I know I've got to do something, but I am afraid to try to make any move because I've heard the stories. I don't know if I'm ready. I don't know if I can afford it. One of the things that I suggest is that we've got a free kind of practice readiness piece that we'd love to give any one of your listeners to have a chance to listen to it, or not listen to it, excuse me, to, run through it. And it's very numbers driven, but also emotionally driven as well, just to ascertain, are you good to go with this? And if you are, great, we'd love to talk to them. Or you know what? They can go off and there are lots of resources to be able to help find candidates. But I dare say that there's really no company out there that can help you land the right candidate better than we can.
Bob, you teed it up. So tell people how they can get that information.
Yeah, you can go. I'll jump in. You can go to hiringpros.com. We've got
Yeah.
a bunch of free resources. We've got a bunch of blog. We've got our associate readiness quiz and our associate hiring blueprint, all for free. You can go ahead, send us an email at Bryton, Bryton, at hiringpros.com, and be happy to give you anything and everything you need to see a successful relationship. I would just end with this. Jim Collins, who wrote Good to Great, Built to Last, a lot of awesome books. He talks a lot about getting the right people and the right seats on the bus. We've all probably heard that analogy, but he says something really important. He said, your people aren't your most important asset. He said, the right people are. You have to hire the people you're actually in alignment in order to see the magic you want to have happen. Because if you're not, you're just creating problems for yourself and it's going to get really bad and it's going to stink. And so we believe there's ways to actually hire the right people, not based on gut and vibes. And we'd be more than happy to help share that with anyone we can impact.
If you're listening to this podcast on the Dr. Bicuspid Network, I want you to make sure that you go onto drbicuspid.com and search for Gaining a Wingman. 7 Signs an Associate Should Be a Part of Your Future. If you're reading this on Dr. Bicuspid, well, guess what? The article's right here. So it's easy for you to find.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's super easy. And obviously, we are going to put the contact information in the show notes. So that'll be easy for you to find as well. Gentlemen, I know we just scratched the surface today. I know there's a lot more to cover, and I know we will do that in future podcasts. So already looking forward to it.
Great.
Awesome.
Thanks, Kevin. Good to be with you.
Hey, appreciate you guys. And thanks to all of you for listening to this episode of the drbicuspid.com podcast. Yeah, important things to think about heading into 2026. And again, more to come on this subject in the very near future. Till next time, it's Kevin Henry, Editor-in-Chief, signing off. And as always, wishing you nothing but success ahead.